Under the Mercy Trees is, it's about a man who's forced to return home to rural North Carolina when his brother goes missing. And he goes reluctantly, but once he's there, the people who have always loved him and kind of kept the fires burning help him come to terms with his past. It's set in 1986, and then the past scenes, the memory scenes, are set mainly in the 50s. And it's told by four narrators. One is Martin, the man who has been living in New York. He's a failed playwright. His creditors are hounding him. His high school sweetheart, who still has feelings for him, Liza, even though she knows he's gay. The third narrator is Martin's sister, Ivy, who's been labeled as schizophrenic because she sees ghosts. And then the last narrator is Bertie, Martin's sister-in-law, who committed adultery early in her marriage, and she and her husband have never come to terms. They don't speak of it, and that's kind of stunted their marriage. Characters are like your children, and I've been doing these readings, and I have yet to read anything by Bertie, and I feel really guilty about that. I feel like she ought to have equal time. So today I'm going to read a pretty short piece from Bertie's point of view, and then I'll take questions. And I thought I might talk about, the role of truth in fiction and the real things that sort of seeped into your fiction when you're writing. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But this is the scene where Bertie explains why she ran off. Her husband is James, who's Martin's brother, and she has 3 children, Daisy, Sue, and she gets pregnant with her son Bobby as a result of this affair that she's had. There was one good part of Bertie's life. When her youth bloomed, her skin was buttermilk smooth, and the curves of her rump and breasts and calves drew wanting looks from every man in the county. Her hair curled soft in the 1940s perm Willoughby County girls still wore a decade later. She dressed herself up in ribbons and nylons bought at a discount at the Five and Dime where she worked in Lenore, her money all her own. She shared a room with 2 other working girls. They rubbed each other's feet at night, complaining about their bosses, but as happy as could be to be free from parents and answerable to nobody but themselves, a precious selfishness. They spoke aloud daydreams of moving on to Winston or Raleigh, of meeting handsome, wealthy men, of brick homes in Cameron Park and maids to stroll their children. Bertie thought the blooming was forever, a hard-won reward she'd earned for living through a childhood of deprivation and her father's violence. Nobody told her it would pass in a blink like the blush of a morning glory. She chose James because he was handsome and good, didn't drink too much, and because if she squinted her mind's eye, she could fit James into the daydreams she clutched at the way a child does her blanket. Her looks weren't the type that survives past girlhood, that require fine bones to hold skin in place. Jowls sagged and eyes sank in, the deepness of the lines at the corners surprising her anew every morning. It happened so fast. One day, 1 minute even, she was getting the up and down from the boys at Riddle's General Store. The next, nobody was looking at her anymore. She had to give up the daydreams she carried into her marriage because she couldn't play the parts any longer. She was too heavy-hipped and old for her fantasy heroes to love. Birthing 2 big-headed babies had made it so she wet herself when she laughed or picked up something heavy. When she should have been enjoying her husband and daughters, instead she watched her life burn like a wad of newspaper thrown on a fire. One last grand flame passing into gray ash with her hollering after it, "Wait, wait!" She did it to bring herself back. All it took was one appreciating look from a man she hadn't paid any attention to before, a rascal who didn't care what anybody thought. Riding along with him, with her elbow out the window of his truck, Bertie felt how beautifully her hair blew back. Everything she said seemed clever, sexy. Afterward, the he say, her say was that she'd run off to the Peabody Hotel in Memphis, the one with the duck fountain in the lobby. Bertie let the rumor stand. Really, they'd stayed at a motor court outside Asheville. It wasn't fancy, but somebody else cleaned up after them. and when she stretched out on her side on top of the sheets, she found again the lovely curve her pelvic bone made, a smooth ridge that disappeared into extra pounds when she lay any other way. For 3 nights and 3 nights only, she had it all again. Then the 4th morning she woke up and saw an ordinary man, bad breath, snoring, coarse black hair growing ugly all over him. He was as embarrassed as she was. Later that day, he took her to the bus station and gave her $20 for the ticket home. James came and got her at the station. He cried himself into hiccups, and she just held his head. She saw that time had faded the corners of his eyes as well. But a man doesn't disappear when sun creases his face or his hair grays or thins. As deep as his hurt went, it couldn't touch what she herself had lost. James's mouth shook the whole drive home. They reached the trailer at dusk. Her peonies had blossomed while she was gone, and lines of ants followed their sweet smell, swarming the beds. Her parents' screen door opened, and Bertie's older girl, Daisy, came running across the road to hug her. Her younger, Sue, toddled along behind, already not quite sure who Bertie was. Bertie tried to feel joy, but all she felt was despair. It would have been better if James had written her off then, instead of taking it upon himself to make things right for her. She had stolen his life as she'd wasted hers, never feeling anything good inside, and worse, not able to pretend for him. So now she's having